In April of 1906, a steam train brought along a family and their 5 children to a little Midwestern town known as Marceline, Missouri. Among those 5 children, the 4th youngest was a boy at the tender age of 4, a little boy named Walter Elias Disney. This town and the magical train ride that took him would change this boy's life along with American history forever. In this video, our main focus won't just be on trains or Walt Disney himself, but on the connection of his vision of the future, its impact, and what progress in America really is. Anybody who knows Walt Disney knew he was a massive train fanatic. In fact, Walt had a 7¼ ride-on scale model train in his home in Los Angeles and called it the Carolwood Pacific Railroad. This was originally his first vision for Disneyland, and from what can be seen, the influence stuck in the first Anaheim theme park and his subsequent parks around the world. A lot of this stemmed from Walt's childhood memories himself, growing up in a small town, Midwest America, at a time where the train was still the chosen mode of transportation for the nation. To some, it seems backwards, but this became the springboard from which Walt would always envision a future, think differently, and become synonymous with innovation in the fledgling animation industry. He and his studio introduced processes such as the multiplane, which allowed for a depth of field in animation, synchronized sound, music, and visuals culminating into full-length animated features, something which at the time was considered a massive financial risk and a potential flop, but actually gained accolades, nominations, and even Oscars, beginning with Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs in 1937. This established Disney as someone who thought far ahead into the future, and I had a chance to reflect upon this during the recent trip to Walt Disney World in Orlando, specifically the Magic Kingdom and Epcot Center, often regarded as Walt's final project and dying wish. So if he were alive today, what would he think of the progress America and the world have moved with, if in fact we have progressed at all? Then again, what is progress at all to begin with? I had plenty of time to think about this while we were swamped in full capacity, massive holiday lines. Take the Monorail for example, your highway in the sky. This is the largest and highest capacity example of the monorail in America, and it was originally meant for an idea to transport people within populated areas more efficiently with less of a real estate footprint than most other modes of rail transit. Even for a system which began service in Florida in 1971, it still transports millions every year with ease and with less hassle of the bus system Disney introduced later on. It's a big reason why the contemporary, Polynesian, and Grand Floridian resorts remain the most demanded and expensive hotel rooms to stay at the resort. The ease of access the monorail affords to get from your hotel to the most popular theme parks in America. Now, only a few other places around the globe open monorail lines, with most nowhere near the success of Disney's. Some failures include the Sydney Monorail, which opened in the late 1980s and was demolished in 2013 after several incidents and rising maintenance costs exhausted the city. The most popular and successful monorails in the world happen to be in Asia, most notably the Chongqing monorail service of upwards of 1 million passengers a day, and the Tokyo monorail service close to 1/3 of that number. The monorail seems to be gaining more popularity within the East, due to the economies of scale and supply and demand lowering the costs of maintenance, along with technologies such as maglev being introduced to propel the railcars. Not so much in the West, as the notion of high maintenance and construction costs tend to dominate, along with the media portraying it as a Carnival Barker style boondoggle, despite the opposite trend in Asia and advantages in smaller footprint and ease of construction tend to dominate. But it seems the progress of rail and transit has benefited Asia far more than the West, as their population and economies continue to rise in conjunction with increased public and private investments in rail infrastructure. Now, since we mentioned maglev, did you know that Walt Disney World is also home to one of the few examples of a maglev in North America, called the Tomorrowland Transit Authority People Mover? Well, technically it's a linear synchronous motor, which isn't really a maglev, but it uses magnets to propel the cars, similar to the maglev technology being used in Japan's SC maglev. However, the point of this was what Disney Imagineers, as they call them, used this as a model of a future transit system in a future city. Something envisioned by Walt Disney that looks similar to what you see on screen. A city of the future connected and served by all sorts of transportation options. The culmination of this idea rested on Epcot, originally acronymized as Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. A little known fact, Walt Disney originally purchased land in Orlando, Florida to serve as this future community, a zenith to American ingenuity, progress, and even serve as a company town. Unfortunately, he died before that idea was cemented down, and the company thought it'd be better to just have another giant theme park. Alright, so the man dies and his company trades in the Jetsons and Blade Runner for a World's Fair. Disappointing, maybe, but at least Epcot still stands as my favorite park, and a testament to the future, past, present, and different human cultures. And it is fun, getting to try different foods and see actual people from those countries, which is a welcome break from the false promise of the melting pot of large American cities. But between having German beers, shopping for Italian cologne, and eating American funnel cake, the majority of park visitors don't even know what they could have seen in place before. Originally, Epcot would have been a fully walkable community, with a centralized business center, mixed-use commercial buildings, and a choice of living in an urban or semi-suburban space. In Epcot, cars would not be allowed in the city center. Instead, people use Monorail and People Mover for getting in and around, similar to the propulsion used on the Tomorrowland Transit Authority. Cars would be used for weekend getaways or traveling outside the city. Now, note, this was a plan for an American city back in the early 1960s. More than 50 years before we would be talking about mass transit, walkable cities, and transit-oriented development. Walt Disney was already immersing himself into books and ideas on urban planning and city design, fearful of what American cities were turning into at the time, disorganized, dirty, and derelict. In a planned city focused on ingenuity, innovation, and intelligent design, those problems could be avoided, and the Epcot city would become a testbed of brand new ideas centered around people, not the automobile and roads. Now compare the suburbs of North America in our timeline versus European cities, and our model has diametrically failed in most qualitative and quantitative regards. Americans have become depressed, unhappy, out of shape, disconnected from their communities, and Walt's nightmare of once great urban centers of American ingenuity are degenerating into crime-ridden derelict cities, and that's become a reality. Meanwhile, in rail-centric cities like Tokyo are some of the best rated in the world to live, work, and play, and it's apparent to see how progress continues on in a cohesive city where people have one less major worry about how their infrastructure will work correctly. Sometimes the inspiration for the progress in the future can be taken from the past. Rail-centric communities was not a new idea, and still continues today. Walt's experience of what was American at the time transcended as the backbone of how he carried on through his life, pursuing what would make each day better than before.
So that's what Epcot is, an experimental prototype community that will always be in a state of becoming.
That magic of him arriving into Marceline stayed with him for the rest of his life, as Walt saw the train as a portal to the new and exciting, the steel blood that built America up from an age of turmoil into a golden age of prosperity. To that generation born in that time, progress was seen as something more tangible, not a software upgrade or a bigger screen, but major inventions at that time such as the aeroplane, the automobile, the diesel engine, electricity, the telephone, in an era known as La Belle Epoque. The wonderment of having large centers where people learn, work, discover, and make something for everyone to use and enjoy, infuse those people with a competitional sense of improvement, whether it was replacing the horse with the car or far more sinister works of death, the cavalry with the tank. It carried on even through the absolutely massive devastation of World War I and onward until about the baby boomer generation where progress sort of began to stop. To our original question, What does progress really mean? Well, it's enabling humanity to be able to look objectively at what works and what doesn't. It doesn't mean making or having better technology, but it's using it to its best advantage. The entire computing power required for the landing of Apollo on the surface of the moon is less than what we have in the palm of our hands today. Yet, we are nowhere closer to setting foot beyond our own solar system than what men like Walt Disney believed we could have achieved. In Disney's time, 2001 was seen as the future, something achievable where we would reach higher into the heavens in our own solar system and claim domain of what mankind was destined for beyond the stars. In our timeline, however, the only high we got that year was Afro Man. The greatest disappointment to the entrepreneuring men and women of the greatest generation of yore has been that we have not achieved any of that. No personal space travel, no networks of high-capacity levitating trains, just Facebook and, well, plain unoriginality. Much of it can be blamed on the baby boomer generation that entertained themselves with instant gratification and rebelliousness for the sake of rebelliousness, taking for granted much of what was the bedrock laid for them. A flirtation with socialism pushed them into dipping into the advantages the last generation built up, along with a sickening and hypocritical obsession with destroying the environment and then pretending to fix it now, resulting in our current debt crisis, implosion of Social Security, and a polluted world. Strong men create easy times create weak men create hard times, and hard times create strong men. That opens up hope for the future though, and to achieve that, we need to rethink what American progress is. Time and progress can be thought of as a railroad, with one branching into another outcome. To bring an easily relatable example for most of our pop culture obsessed generation, think of what Doc Brown said in Back to the Future about multiple possibilities, and most importantly, the future is what you make of it. Progress cannot come from consumption alone. It must come from production, by getting up and seeing what is wrong, being truthful and open about it, researching ways of thinking it and not taking no for an answer when you know the answer is yes. Indeed, progress has slowed, and the present may not be exactly as great as what we hoped for it to be in the past. But the future is what we make of it, and it's always changing. This is further personified in Walt Disney's attraction, the Carousel of Progress. It follows a family through the 20th century and parallel to the advances of the era. The American family has certainly changed its lifestyle, and the conveniences we have been given today should only make our progress even easier, not harder. It's time to not exist and consume, but to dream and make again. What the future can be is always changing in this present, and we have no clue what the future is going to be 20, 30, or 50 years from now. But one constant does remain. There is a great big beautiful tomorrow, and tomorrow is just a dream away.
Hello everyone, we hope you enjoyed this episode looking into the broader aspect of American infrastructure and futurism. We still have plenty of work to do, and I apologize for the long absence, as it has been a complete pain finally moving into a new state and getting all my stuff in order. We are back in action, and you can help us out in a number of ways. One, by subscribing to the High Speed Rail America Club for more content relating to the advocacy, technology, and building of advanced rail technology within the United States and around the world. Another way you can support the channel is through Patreon, allowing us to bring in better content, more quality, at a faster rate. Be sure to also share the revolution with your friends. We'll see you all next episode.